My name's Connor Ingram from CongruentX. I'm a Power Platform Specialist and Solution Architect. I want to thank Marin for kind of getting this set up, and Pathfinders, for what they're doing. And I think it's awesome. What Marin and that team is doing, kind of educating people on the Power Platform and enabling people to find a cool career. So we've got a couple new people here. So just for the newer people, I do want to mention just kind of what the Power Platform is, right? You might know what Canvas apps are, you might know what model apps are, but you might not know really what the Power Platform is. So the Power Platform essentially is a platform that Microsoft has built that enables people and businesses to solve problems with technology. And the goal of our session today is to talk about two of the technologies you can use to solve problems: model-driven apps and Canvas apps. There are a bunch of different elements to the Power Platform. We're talking about Power Apps specifically today, so that includes model-driven and Canvas apps. But there's also Power Automate, there's Power BI, Power Virtual Agents. There's a bunch of different elements to the Power Platform. But essentially, just think of it as a suite of technologies that allow you to solve problems with low code or no code. All right, this one should be fun. So the whole concept of this is kind of, model apps and Canvas apps are battling, right? We're comparing and contrasting the two. So I kind of wanted to build personas. I wanted to characterize each app. And so I've got some ideas of what the persona of a model app is. But I want to see what you guys think too. If you were to personify a model-driven app, what would that look like to you? To me, he's like a stand-up guy. He's super reliable, and you'll probably wake up at like 7 a.m. and he's mowing your lawn for you. Feel free to submit some ideas of what you would think personifies a model-driven app. A dad. That's great. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Model-driven apps are for sure the dad app. Canvas apps, I kind of imagine them to be very creative, like very high empathy, a very complex personality. Let's see what you guys think. What are you all, if you were to personify a Canvas app, what would that look like to you? James Bond or Jack Bauer? This is great. Okay, so why are these two guys at war? And I mean, we just need to take a second to reflect on my Photoshop skills here. Just soak it in. So why are they at war? I mean, they're not really. Most people would say there's a place for both. It makes a great session topic, but there definitely are some people in the community who are very pro Canvas app, and I'd say there are also people who are very anti Canvas app. So that's kind of the whole concept of this session, is to just open everybody up to both apps and kind of see when you would use one or both or together, right? Really, the answer to when you should use a Canvas app or a model app is it depends, right? The ultimate consulting answer. It depends, because it does. It totally does depend. When I think about a model-driven app, I kind of like to think of it as like a choose-your-own-adventure, right? From the user's perspective, not from the maker's perspective. From the user's perspective, I like to think I'm kind of creating my own adventure, right? As the maker, I've given you the keys to the car, and as the user, I'm going to create my own path, right? I'm going to drive on my own highway, right? So that could mean I'm going to look at a view of all the contacts that I haven't talked to in 6 months, and I'm going to create a task and make sure, you know, I send them an email. Or it could be, I'm going to do some lead generation today, and I'm going to add a bunch of leads into the system and try to progress them and see if we can get any opportunities. Or it could be, you know, I want to see dashboards, right? I want to see how many opportunities I've created, or I want to see how many new accounts have been created into the system. There's a couple different components of model-driven apps, and this would be great for some of us that are newer to the platform. What we're looking at here is called a view. Essentially, you could think of a view as like an Excel sheet. It is just a list of things. You can do different things with that list, but really, really simply, a view is just a list of things. And you can filter those things. So you could say, you know, right now we're looking at a list of accounts or stores, you could call them. I could filter that and say, show me all the stores that are in Georgia, or show me all the stores that have that don't have contacts related to them, so I can add some, right? We also have forms. So whereas views, we're looking at multiple things. Typically a form, you're looking at one thing. You're looking at one record. So again, to go back to the Excel analogy, we're looking at one row in an Excel sheet. And typically the use case from like a UI perspective is a form is where you're going to be creating new records or new rows, right? Or you're going to be editing new records or new rows. You could also be just viewing this contact or this record, right, in more detail. So we're always going to be able to see more detail in a form than we are in a view, just because of the screen real estate, right? The final component we'll talk about today, there are more. I'm just keeping it really simple here. The final component is dashboards. Dashboards and charts, right? Dashboards are exactly what it sounds like. It's just a visualization of the data that is in your model-driven app. So that's, you know, pie charts, that's line charts, it's all of that good stuff. So when I think about Canvas apps, I kind of reverse the create your own adventure analogy we talked about with model driven, right? Model driven, from the user's perspective, I'm creating my own adventure. But with a Canvas app, as a user, the adventure has already been created for me, right? I'm just doing one specific process, or maybe, you know, one or two different things in this app. With a Canvas app, as the maker, I'm creating the adventure. I'm creating the context and the UI for whatever solution or problem I'm trying to solve for. We'll go over the different components, or the main components of Canvas apps. There's a ton, right? We'll keep it super simple for now. The first being screens, right? Whenever we think about, you know, a mobile app, the first thing you're going to think about is screens, right? There's always going to be multiple different kinds of, or multiple screens that do different things. You'd have a home screen, you know, maybe you have an edit screen, you have a view screen, things like that. And let's go over a couple of the controls. I'm gonna have to play a little dodgeball here to stay out of the way. The first is a combo box. That's what this control is here that I'm highlighting. A combo box is like a pre-selected set of items. So it's a list of items that the user can pick from, right? They can pick one or multiple things. Sometimes they can search for things within that box, but it's basically a way for a user to say, there's something that already exists in my system and I want to select that, or multiple things, right? A text input is pretty self-explanatory. It is for the user to input text. If I shift over here, we have buttons. Again, pretty self-explanatory. It's just a shape for a user to press and the app will do something, right? Whatever you want it to do. A gallery is a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit more abstract to think about until you actually, you know, get into it and build one. But the way I like to describe it is a gallery is a repeating set of controls. So to use an example here, we see a list of tasks, right? These are different things I need to do. So it's a list of items. And for each item, when I build a gallery, I specify what controls I want to see. So for this first item, you can see I've got a checkbox, and I've got a label, and I've got an image here at the end, right? So for each thing I have to do, or for each item, I specify what controls are here. And then for however many items are in my list, the gallery will repeat that. So these aren't, individual controls. I didn't copy and paste 4 different checkboxes, 4 different labels. You just specify what one item looks like, and then they will all kind of dynamically fit that shape. Here we have a little bit of a cheat sheet. You could kind of think of this as like a checkbox, right? If you find yourself checking a lot of these boxes, chances are you're leaning towards a model app. And we'll go over a couple of these here. Are users creating their own context? Meaning there's probably multiple things a user is trying to do, and they're not necessarily doing the same thing every time. That's going to be a little bit more of an indication that this is a model app solution. The volume of data that you're dealing with is really important to consider too. So if my process involves me reviewing 10,000 rows of data, I'm probably going to have an easier time dealing with that data in the context of a model app versus a Canvas app. The relationships that you have in your data model are also very important to consider. Canvas apps do not like traversing multiple relationships. And what I mean is I'll use like a store and contact example, right? Let's say I've got a Walmart. That's my top level. And I have employees that work at that Walmart. So Walmart is our parent, and we have multiple employees that are related to that Walmart. That would be a one-to-many relationship. And in a Canvas app, we could easily traverse that one relationship. We can see the employee and we can see where they work, as well as we can see the store and we can see all the employees that work there. That's cake, that's easy. Where you want to start considering different solutions is if you have 3 to 4 levels of relationships you need to traverse. It becomes really complicated. So if we have like a store, and we have a store supervisor, and then a manager, and then an employee, and then tasks for that employee. If you have multiple layers of data that you need to traverse, just know that a Canvas app is going to be more complicated, and you're going to have to kind of be really careful how you do things to make sure your app is really performant. Model-driven apps are already set up to handle multiple relationships really easily. You can just kind of infinitely bounce between records. It's not hard to do. The actual device that people are using is really important too. So if most of your end users are going to be on a computer or tablet, you really should consider a model app. Again, the UI is preset. And it's already going to scale to different screen sizes, whereas a Canvas app, you kind of have to build that. And something I think about too with a model app is system management, general use. And what I mean by that is typically for any solution, any problem you're trying to solve, any solution, there's almost always going to be a user side of things, and there's going to be a management side of things. And what I mean by that is if someone says, hey, we need a way for users to track time, likely your users are going to use a Canvas app to track time. Maybe they're on the go, they're going from store to store, and they're going to be using a Canvas app. But there's likely a management side of that where not necessarily managers, but we need to be able to review the data that the users are entering, or we just need to see it, right? We need to see all of the different time entries, all of the different users. We might have configuration that we need to do. That's a great use case for model apps. Our Canvas app cheat sheet, it looks kind of similar in some ways, but there's a couple points we'll go over here. The first is if you find that the problem you're trying to solve is like a single process or a single activity, you might lean towards a Canvas app so you can build that tailored experience for the user, right? Because model-driven apps are they're too open. There's too many things you can do. Again, when we're thinking about a model app, the UI is already there. All you're doing is adding your data to it. You're adding your data sources into that UI. The UI is already built. You have some level of configuration. You can create your own views, your own forms, like we talked about earlier. But for the most part, the UI is always going to be the same, no matter what model app you're in. A Canvas app, again, is just a blank slate. You're creating the UI. You're creating that experience. Having users on phones and tablets is a decent indicator that you should consider Canvas, just because with a smaller screen real estate, you might want to get creative with the UI and maybe leave out some things that would be included in a model-driven app, right? So you can kind of keep the experience clean and focused. You can also ask yourself, am I creating content on behalf of the user? Again, am I creating that context? Am I creating that experience on behalf of the user? Custom UI requirements, like we talked about. External data sources is also a big one. I find that a lot of times, if we need to connect to external data sources, meaning something that is not within your system, so not Dataverse, Canvas apps can be a really easy way to connect to them, right? Model-driven apps can connect to external data sources, but they do it in what's called virtual tables, and they're not always super easy to set up. Whereas a Canvas app, you just create your connector and you immediately have that data that can come in. So that's a great option if you have like a SQL server or SharePoint or some other data source that you want to bring into your system. You want to bring it into the UI, but you may or may not want to spend the time to create a virtual table, right? So now I want to go over a couple scenarios, and we can all participate here. I want to go over a couple scenarios, and we'll try to kind of walk through what we think the solution would be together. Users travel to 3 to 4 retail stores every day, restocking shelves, ordering products, and among other things. They don't have visibility into any data, as in incoming orders, that they need to unload from a truck and put on the shelves, right? The restocking shelves, or seeing the sales volume or current inventory or anything, right? Managers also don't have visibility into their users' visits or productivity. They don't, from a day-to-day basis, they don't know who's visiting where. They don't know, the last time a store had a user there. Also, some managers are reporting false and inaccurate visits from users, meaning a user is saying they went to a store, but they maybe didn't go to the store. They were just at home. So the specific requirements for this solution are users need a way to see external data, like the incoming orders and such. We need to track mileage. So as the users are driving from store to store, they need to be able to keep track of how far they're driving. And 3, managers want to make sure users are on site before starting a visit. Now, you could do this in a model app. It is possible, but there's a couple requirements that kind of make this seem a little bit more like a Canvas app solution to me. The big one is making sure users are on site before starting a visit. This is location services, right? There's not a great way in a model app, or maybe anyway, there's not a great way to see the GPS location of a user. So what we could do in a Canvas app, we can enable location services and compare the location of the store with the location of the user and say, are they actually there, right? Users need a way to track mileage. That could be done in a model-driven app, but keep in mind, the users are on the go, right? They're using their phones. So we likely want to give them a tailored UI experience that's going to work with the smaller screen real estate of a phone. Again, that's another one that's really screaming Canvas app. If we need to kind of bring in external data for the users to see, Canvas is super easy to do that with. You could do it with Model, but the barrier to entry is a little bit higher. So we have an audio-visual production company that wants to keep track of their inventory. Right now, they have a database of all the items owned, so they know what they have, but they don't really have a way to see or interact with this data. We'll say it's just stored on a server somewhere. Users are mostly using computers, and they have a large variety of things that they want to do with that data. There's not really one set thing. Maybe they want to see what things are out of stock, or they want to see, how many items do I have in a certain category, right? Our requirements here are users need to easily see and interact with inventory data. Users need to be able to query data in multiple ways, again, like we talked about, being able to answer questions like how many items are out of stock, how many items are being repaired, kind of general purpose things. And there are several processes that need to be supported, like creating a quote and maybe sending an invoice. And creating a quote would look like, creating a new record, specifying who this quote is going to, and what inventory items would be included in this quote. What do we think? Let me open our poll here. What do we think a solution would be here? So for me, specifically with these requirements, users needing to be able to see and interact with data easily. You can do that in a Canvas app, but again, the way that we're seeing these requirements and that they're general use cases, right? There's a lot of different things users want to be able to do with this data. I would lean more towards model-driven app to fit these requirements specifically. And again, users are largely using computers. That's another indicator for me that I would lean towards a model-driven approach for this. All right, so our final scenario, I'll be straightforward here. It's a little bit of a trick question, but I'm interested to see what results we get. We have the same background, right? So same situation, but there's a couple different requirements in this scenario, which I've inaccurately named 2. This is 3. Don't be deceived. This is scenario 3. Users want a drag and drop experience when creating a quote. They want to be able to create a quote, see which items are available for that quote, and they want to kind of drag and drop different items and select a quantity for that quote. We'll say that the out of the box model driven experience was a little bit cumbersome for them. So in this specific scenario, I would say both. Right? This is a great example of we have a specific requirement, a specific UI requirement, but we also want the flexibility of a model-driven app. And specifically, and some of you might not know this is a thing, I would embed a Canvas app in a model-driven app. So when I'm creating a quote, I would populate a embedded Canvas app to give the user that drag and drop kind of customized UI experience. That's what I would do. All right, so we still have a little bit of time here. I think what I want to do here, and there's 2 ways we can do this. We can kind of free for all, and if anybody has just any question, it doesn't have to be related to Canvas or Model, just any questions about the Power Platform. We can drop it in the chat, or feel free to use the Q&A. Any thoughts on how to manage who can create apps? Yeah, so that's something we see a lot specifically at CongruentX is there's a lot of power in building these no-code, low-code apps. And, for larger companies, something that they find a lot is, well, hey, this is awesome, but I don't necessarily want every employee building apps that connect directly to our databases, which is that's a fair assessment. And so what we typically recommend is something called the COE, which is the Center of Excellence. And essentially what that does is it's a solution you install into your environment or into your tenant, really, that gives managers, IT managers, the ability to control who can create Canvas apps. They kind of go through a vetting process, model-driven apps too. They go through like a use case process. So, you know, if I'm an employee and I have an idea for an app that I think is going to benefit people, I can build that app and kind of present that use case, and IT will approve that idea or say, hey, let's, you know, review a couple things and then we'll start to use this. Is CRM dead? Oh man. Is CRM dead since Power Apps can address so many specific things? Why do we need CRM anymore? CRM is not dead. I would say it's evolving, right? It's evolving. It's evolving more into a platform, right? RevOps is kind of the key word here. CRM is especially when we're talking about the Power Platform. It's a great way to kind of jumpstart you into taking care of your customers and giving them the best experience you can. Here we go. Okay. Would you please share with us how to integrate Canvas and model-driven apps? That's a little bit of a longer discussion because there's a couple ways you can do it. The easy way is when you are creating a form and you add a field, there will be a component that is called Canvas app. And that is the easiest way to do it. It's not typically the way I do it for more technical reasons. But that's a great question. I think I could probably do a whole session on how to integrate Canvas and model-driven apps, because there's a whole lot of different ways you can do it. How does the tech work that lets you draw a picture and create a simple app? It's AI is really what's driving that. I haven't used it. I haven't heard great things about it, but I think it's a really cool concept because there's a lot of people when they're thinking about building an app, they're very hands-on, they're very visual, so they like to kind of draw out each screen on a piece of paper. And essentially what Chuck's talking about here is you can import that picture, and the Power Platform will use AI wizardry to kind of take that picture and kind of build the app for you in a way. It's a great design tool is the way I think of it. Personally, I just kind of start building the app. I make it not functional. I just add controls and things where they're supposed to go. I think it's a great design tool for those that are a little bit more kind of hands-on and they want to draw things out. All right. I don't think we have any more questions. If you do, I think you have my email at this point. Feel free to drop an email. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Give you any resources I could. Thanks everybody a ton for joining. This was my first live webinar, so hopefully it provided some value to you. Hopefully it was fun. Yeah, reach out directly if you have any questions or just want to chat. Thanks everybody, and I will send everybody that was in the meeting a copy of this webinar in case you want to see it again.